Welcome back, everybody. This is my part 3 of my 70s albums collection, and I'm going to have to do a little backtracking here on this video because I had missed out a couple albums before that people asked. It was kind of funny. People expect me to have certain things in my collection. Where's this? Why don't you have that? But there was a couple that they were right. Yeah, I had some of this stuff. It just wasn't in my 70s collection. Now, the way I've got my albums, I guess, separated right now on display. I've got the 60s stuff, which is the stuff you see behind me when I do my normal videos. And I've got the rest of my albums basically 70s, and then I got the 80s separate. And the reason I did that is because when I had these album racks built, the idea was to have people over. It's easier to go through them. You can kind of see them like in a record store, as opposed to, if you see behind me here, we've got these tall upright album cases here, which is much more efficient to store. You can go floor to ceiling, but it's really hard to see them. So that's why I went the direction with that. So when I'd have people over, and since I went to high school and college in the 80s. So invariably my friends are of the same age. So, the girls want to listen to the 80s stuff. All right, so I put those separately just to give them their own little section, So I've got all kinds of fun stuff in the 80s section. Maybe I'll show those someday, I don't know. But some of my 70s stuff was in there as well. And you'll see why. There's obviously some crossover in the decades. And the one thing people asked me about were the Cars. Now, at the end of the last video, I left off on Mr. Lennon. And you may have noticed I didn't have any Zeppelin. Well, I've gotten rid of all my Zeppelin albums. I had every album. Got rid of those. I had some AC/DC. I've been trying to get rid of some stuff. And some stuff I did buy on CD like in the 90s. And basically, a lot of it's on my computer. So I just prefer to have some stuff there and not really have the physical media necessarily. So let's start with the Cars here. So somebody was a big fan of the Cars, and my heat is about to go on. Hold on, let me just check that. Let me turn that off. I'll be right back. Okay. Who needs heat? Okay, so let's just start with the Cars. I did pass these guys up, and the Cars were the one band, late 70s, early 80s, that was the only new band that I bought. I loved the Cars. So when somebody said, hey, where are your Cars? I felt kind of, oh yeah, you want to see some Cars? I'll show you some Cars. So the first album, I can't remember the first song I heard, but I heard them being played on the radio, and some songs off this album. And I first got this on cassette, because this was the age of the Walkmans were coming out and stuff. And I really loved this first album a lot, and it's a classic. So that album, put that here. Second album, Candy-O. Now, one of the cool things about the Cars, this painting was done by Alberto Vargas. If you know that name, he was the guy responsible for all the pinup type of paintings and things during World War II, the pinup models on the calendar girls and things like that. So he had a bit of a resurgence in the late 70s, and they got him to do this, which is a great cover. And the Cars always had, I always found them to be a little bit different. And they certainly, I just loved their music. And there was a lot of music at the time that was more synthy, and so they fit right in. But somehow I thought that they stood out a lot more because they had a very fine guitar player in Elliot Easton. Now, the third album, 1980, so that's why I guess these fell into my 80s collection. This is 78. 79, 80, and this is Panorama. So when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, getting into the Cars, this was the album. Cars fans loved this album. That's what they told me. But this was not a commercial album. Didn't sell that well, but all the Cars fans really liked it. And there's a couple songs on here I really like. One of my favorites is "You Wear Those Eyes." One of my favorite Cars songs. So because that one didn't sell so well, I assume the record company started tapping the foot a little bit and suggested they come up with something a little more commercial, which was Shake It Up, 1981. And this was all over the radio, and I liked it, but they kind of took a turn with this album, and it was just much more of a commercial record. Some good songs on here. This Could Be Love, I Like a Dream Away, and of course, Since You're Gone, which was a single. So that was 81, and I think this was like 83. This was a huge, is this more Vargas here? I guess we do have a little more Vargas. Huge album. This I call the video album, because they did so many videos that were at the time, they were just, nobody was doing videos that clever. So this was kind of a video album, and those singles, there was like 4 singles off this album that just spread over a year. So this album was around forever. They became megastars, they toured, and seemed like nothing could stop them. Then they do 85, the obligatory greatest hits album, which I like the cover, but I didn't, this was a band that it was hard to do a greatest hits album of this band because they weren't really a singles band, though they did have hits. The 2 new songs on here, well, it was a remix of the song I'm Not the One, but then Tonight She Comes was the hit single off here, which I thought was an absolutely dreadful song, saved only by an excellent guitar solo. And then we're 2 more years go by, and then we get Door to Door, which was their last album of the period. And I remember buying this, and I bought tickets to see them live, but the show got canceled, so I didn't know if they broke up. To this day, I don't even know if they broke up at that time, or if they didn't have enough ticket sales, but they just kind of faded away. This album, it's got some good songs on it, but just not like the first 3 albums. So, they did a great job in that short period of time, and I think, again, Elliot Easton doesn't get nearly enough recognition, but all the players were good in this band. And then I even had the solo albums, and they're okay. They're not essential. And then they had an album in about 2012, maybe 2010, which is actually pretty good. You know what they sound like? Just like the Cars. So, okay, getting back to another thing that I didn't bring out, that I completely forgot, because I had all these albums in a different area. I had them right over here. The reason I had them, well, I'll tell you who it is first. It's Crosby, Stills, Nash Young. One of my favorites. That's this whole stack right here. Now, let's see if I can bring these over here without hurting my back. So the reason these were not all together with my other 70s stuff is because I've been contemplating doing a video on them. I thought, well, how am I going to do this? And I have an idea that's going to be different the way I do my normal band histories, my band videos. And I'm hoping I can do this with a little bit of humor. But the way I put these in my album shelves, I just put them in basically chronologically. It doesn't matter if it's Crosby, Stills, Nash, Stills, Young, Neil Young, Stills solo, Crosby, Nash. I just put them all in one stack and put them chronologically. Actually, this would be the first one, the first Neil Young solo album. So this starts, roughly 69 to, I go up to about, let's see what I got, Daylight, I get 82. So this is, that 82 period, after the album that all these 60s bands did after Lennon died is kind of where I cap it, where they kind of had their last hurrah before giving way and becoming basically an oldies act. And so lots of stuff in here. I'm just going to show them. I'm not going to give too much away right now because I guess I got to do a video now because you guys won't let me forget it if I don't do it. All kinds of interesting, very interesting albums here. Good stuff on every one of them. There's some stinkers, there's some classics. It's hard I spent many, many years collecting Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young and slowly listening to all the stuff in this era. I'm not that interested in the stuff past 82, and that's just how I am with most music from 60s and 70s artists anyway, with some exceptions. So anyway, these albums they've got all kinds of stuff that is great, all kinds of stuff that's not so great, and it's kind of a pain to go through it all and find it. So basically I created just a giant playlist of the stuff I really like from these guys, and I do a lot of cherry picking. But there's obviously some classic albums, and I'm sure many of you have a good number of these in your collection. And when I do a video on these guys, obviously they started in the 60s and they helped close out the 60s in dramatic fashion. And I'd like to be able to do them at some point. So that's why I had these all off to the side. And I had forgotten about them. Manassas, there's another one. Okay, so I had left off with Mr. Lennon, as I said. And that brings us to Little River Band. Now, Little River Band was a band at the time I wasn't into too much, but good singles. I still like listening to them today. Loggins and Messina. So many people think that this is the first album, the self-titled album, Loggins and Messina. But actually, this is the first album where it was supposed to be Kenny Loggins solo with Jim Messina producing. But they got on so well, Kenny Loggins had Jim Messina sit in, and that's why it's called Kenny Loggins with Jim Messina sitting in. That's the first album. I thought I had another one. As I said, I've been kind of thinning some of this stuff out. This is a pretty good start if you're looking to start somewhere. It's got the short version of Angry Eyes on here that they contemplating releasing as a single. Apparently, I don't know why they didn't. Vicki Lawrence. So, got any Carol Burnett fans out there? I'm a big Carol Burnett fan. The Nights Went Out in Georgia. The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia was a #1 song. What an era for #1 songs in the 70s. Very, very ropey. Oh, Liberace. So this Piano Gems. Yeah, this is I bought this one for the 70s party. He's from Milwaukee, so I gotta have some Liberace. Okay, Chuck Mangione, Feels So Good, one of the happiest songs ever. Manilow, yeah, I mean, you gotta have some Barry Manilow. This has got the hole in it. I had the string. This is one that we strung up. Trying to Get the Feeling, Greatest Hits. So I got a little bit of him. And we got little Superfly here. So Curtis Mayfield. This album, I do like some of that funk in that kind of early to mid-70s funk. Some of it's actually very, very interesting. And this album is pretty good. The film is fun. It's the first film, when they started tricking out all these cars, that term tricking out a car, that started with this movie. Oh, we got Mr. McCartney here. Okay, so I don't have, this is my McCartney pile. So I pretty much have everything of the 70s. What don't I have? Speed of Sound, London Town, Back to the Egg, McCartney 2. And then finally, Tug of War. What have we got here? Poster from something. Poster from one album. I don't know what from what. This was the last album I really cared to get from him. I kind of gave up on him after he kind of lost me with Broad Street and Press to Play and all that stuff. Just wasn't interested. And of course, I got the greatest hits. I'd like to do another video on McCartney because what's interesting, he's such a polarizing artist. And there are two, what I would call major types of McCartney fans. And they don't get along with one another. So I thought that might be an interesting video topic. Okay, we got Van McCoy, Disco Baby. This is the album with The Hustle, I think. Yep, Hustle. That's it. Oh, okay, so this is a little bit of a switch. Got any Pat Metheny fans there? I'm a fan of Pat Metheny, great guitar player. And I've got these more recently, probably in the last 5 to 10 years. This is his breakthrough, Bright Size Life, which is excellent. And this is Lyle Mays and Mark Egan. He's with the Pat Metheny group. So just if you like that kind of guitar, that jazz guitar, you're going to like Pat Metheny. We got more. Oh, we got more. Okay, The Divine Miss M. So these are just things I picked up, kind of interesting to have in the collection. Some people, like I say, when I have people over, the things they pull out to play, we put it on the record player, and that's how I get reintroduced to some of what I have in my collection. Now here's some stuff. The Steve Miller Band, a couple of these are late 60s albums, and a couple albums here that nobody's really ever acknowledges. This is like his 4th album, Recall the Beginning, A Journey from Eden, and then number 5. I mean, and then the big hit, The Joker. So, Steve Miller was so huge in the 70s. I liked Fly Like an Eagle, and then the album after that, which was, what was it called? I forget. Dreams, some book full of dreams. I can't remember. Anyway, everybody's shouting at their screen right now. Okay, Joni. Okay, Joni Mitchell is somebody I had all of her albums, and I'm a big Joni Mitchell fan. And that was one of the first artists, because I was so into her. My albums weren't in the best shape. They were all used. I didn't have one new album of hers, but I bought them all on CD. So I got rid of a lot of my albums originally, and I've picked them up through the years. This is from her archive series. This is actually her some 60s demos and things. I've actually not even opened this yet. I'll get around to it at some point. So she had, I'm seeing Blue right here. So the 3 albums before this, Song to a Seagull, Clouds, Ladies of the Canyon, Blue. So Blue was kind of the album that separated her, what people call the folk stuff, which I don't use that term to describe her music, but some people do, just for lack of a better word. The folk stuff and the jazzier pop stuff. So these next 3 albums are this is my sweet spot for Joni. For the Roses, Court and Spark, which is the first album I bought of hers, and then The Hissing of Summer Lawns. And this album, I was mentioning earlier, I would buy those 70s albums for 25 cents at the Overstock, this place that used to sell these Overstock albums once a year. I got this for 25 cents. Best 25 cents I ever spent in my life. All right. Oh, we got more Joni. We're not done with Joni here. We got Hejira. Yeah, this is a wonderful album. Don't want to go too much into Joni because maybe I might touch upon her in the future. Mingus, Don Juan's Reckless Daughter. This is a double. And then Shadows and Light. So she was late 70s. She was drawing huge crowds. I mean, we're talking like arenas. I think in Milwaukee. I think she played Alpine Valley. I think she did 3 shows on a weekend. That's how big she was. And then kind of the apologetic return to her past, While Things Run Fast. And that's kind of where I stopped. I had some other stuff of hers. I would listen to it on CD in the 80s. This is a bootleg, her and James Taylor picked up years ago. And we got some Willie. We got some Olivia. Oh man, so Olivia, yeah, as a kid growing up in my grandparents' restaurant, sticking a 50-cent piece in the jukebox, which got me 7 plays, I'd be playing some Olivia. In fact, this was the song I'd play a lot. Let Me Be There, that was a big hit. So she had big hits and she was so beautiful. Everybody just was in love with her. So, one of Australians' finest. So yeah, some of these are a bit, not the best. So there you go. Very beautiful shot of her. So I think I go all the way up. Well, she starts doing the soundtracks. Grease, that was, very big. I was never a big Grease fan. I preferred, if we were doing like musicals, I actually preferred the Saturday Night Fever. I loved Happy Days, loved Laverne and Shirley. I love that 50s stuff. But, I mean, I can only take so much. Xanadu. I always liked the song on here. Was it Magic is on here? I thought that was a great song. Not a great movie. A couple great songs. Okay, Laura Nyro. I don't have a lot of her stuff. My introduction to her was The Fifth Dimension, and she wrote some wonderful songs for them. And this particular album is, I think, 1970. Shoot, I should have looked this up. I don't remember. It's with LaBelle. So Patti LaBelle, her group LaBelle, is with her on this album. So an interesting record. And then finally, the first songs. This is a collection of some of her earlier songs that she did give away, like Blowing Away and When I Die, Wedding Bell Blues. So, I know everybody talks about, you hear, the only time you hear her name is how big of a fan Todd Rundgren was of her. I'm a mild fan. I think she's very good, and I don't know her material that well. So anyway, let's stop there. I've got a 4th part I'm going to do because otherwise I thought I didn't want to have too long of a final piece here. And, as you can see, Bogey is sleeping in the back here. I put him right to sleep. So I didn't want to put you to sleep, so we're going to do a part 4 coming up very soon. So I thank you for watching Pop Goes the 60s.